Yes, this is a Halloween mug. On this channel, it is spooky all year round. Hello and welcome to What a Ghoul Wants. My name is Anna, I'm your ghoul, and what I want is to talk about underrated women in horror. So, as horror fans know, we all love the Ellen Ripleys, the Laurie Strodes, the Nancy Thompsons, all of those well-known final girls and the well-known villainesses, the ones that we talk about all the time, the ones you constantly hear about, and for good reason. Those are very good characters and very well acted by the actresses who play them. We love them for a good reason. They are well-written characters that we can latch onto and appreciate, but they are not the only characters in the horror genre that deserve the love and attention they get. I think that there are a lot of characters and actresses that simply do not get the credit that they deserve, and I just wanted to shout out a couple of those people on my video today. So this is going to be a list of 10 women in horror that I feel are underrated, and I'm going to be talking about the characters, but also how they are played by the actresses who play them. This is, of course, by no means a comprehensive list. There are plenty of people that I won't be able to talk about today. And of course, I have not seen every single horror movie ever, so there are some that I just haven't been able to see for myself yet. So I'm just going to talk about ones that I am familiar with, ones that I love, and wish I saw more of in discussions within the horror community and just in the larger world of film in general. So I'm going to be focusing mostly on the character, how the character is written, how they function within their own story, but of course I will discuss the actress as well. The first one that I want to talk about is Gretel from Gretel and Hansel. So I just think this movie is kind of underrated in general. I don't know what went on when it first came out. I don't know if it was mismarketed. It just did not seem like the kind of movie that it ended up being to me. It is a very artsy, very visually stunning, simplistic narrative, but very well done, and not at all what I thought it was going to be. And Sophia Lillis does an amazing job portraying Gretel. Gretel is a teenager who is forced out of her home. I want to say it's maybe somewhere in the Netherlands. I'm not sure. It's definitely a fictional and fantastical setting, but definitely somewhere that seems like it's in Europe. It's just basically a modernized fairy tale, a modernized Hansel and Gretel, but the title purposefully flips their names because Gretel is absolutely the most central person in this story. She is what drives the story forward. She is who we focus on the most. And she is tasked with finding work and finding a new home for her and her brother. And what ensues is her trying to find her way through a magical forest, encountering a witch. It's very similar to the classic Hansel and Gretel story. And the witch is drawing them in with food, but Gretel is full of agency in this movie. She reminds me a lot of Thomasin in The Witch, but does not get nearly as much credit as Thomasin, and it's another story that involves magic and witches and what to do if you have this power, if you are offered this power of magic. And Gretel sees the way that the witch is using her magic for evil, and she chooses to use hers for good. And she's looking out for her brother the whole time. She is just trying to find her way in the world while also protecting herself and her brother. She is smart and savvy, and although she does make some mistakes, we see her working through them, and we see how she as a character is just trying to do the best thing the whole time. And she's just beautifully portrayed by Lillis. It's a very quiet and sort of understated character, but you're definitely rooting for her the whole time. You want her and Hansel to get out of there alive and make it out in the world. And she's just a really good example of a strong female character who has a lot of agency and is making her own choices the whole time. Yeah, I think that she is just really overlooked, and I wish that more people, first of all, just watched the movie. Second of all, really appreciated Sophia Lillis playing Gretel and just Gretel as a character. Next is Ganja from Ganja and Hess. Ganja and Hess is such a unique watch. I saw it for the first time a couple of years ago, and I was just completely blown away. I had never ever seen anything like it before. It's an experimental art house style Black vampire film. It stands out against all of the blaxploitation films of the time. It's just a really special and unique piece of horror from the 70s, but just in general, it really stands alone as a true piece of art in the horror genre. And a large part of that is thanks to the portrayals of the characters. Marlene Clark plays the titular Ganja. Ganja is a woman who encounters Hess, who is a vampire. He turns her into a vampire, and they just kind of go on a killing spree together. And Ganja is very unique in that she is not quite an unwilling partner. I don't think she realizes she's going to be turned into a vampire, but when she is, she's kind of all in on it. She just really takes hold to the power of it. She is always doing what she wants within the context of the narrative. Whether it be pursuing a man that she wants or living the lifestyle she wants. She's very headstrong. She doesn't really take no for an answer. And it's just kind of nice to see this woman who goes out and really gets what she wants, even though it's probably not the most ethical thing, but she is very in charge of her sexuality. She's absolutely stunning. And the way that Clark portrays her is so compelling. She just commands the screen. And I just think she gets left out of the conversation of well-known vampires in the horror genre. I think she deserves more credit than she gets. Next is Jess from Black Christmas, the original Black Christmas from 1974. She is portrayed by Olivia Hussey, and she might be one of the more well-known or more recognized women in horror on this list. I know that some people do cite her as their favorite final girl, although she's absolutely not on the same tier as Ellen Ripley or Sidney Prescott, just in the way that people perceive her as a final girl. But the fact that she is in the quintessential proto-slasher of the 70s, I definitely think she deserves a lot more credit just for that. But she's also a very likable character. The story really shows an intimate portrayal of her. We get a lot of her backstory. We find out that she's pregnant and she does not want the baby, so she's telling her boyfriend that she wants to get an abortion, which at the time in the 70s, of course, is a very hard topic to address. And even now, it's still a very contentious topic. But in the film, her agency is never questioned. She is totally doing what's right for her, and there's never a judgment placed on her for considering getting an abortion. Her boyfriend is not happy with her, but she stands her ground, and that is really commendable. And you're just feeling for her for the rest of the film. Hussey does a great job making her a very distinct character amongst all the rest of the sorority girls. And the whole time she is taking action when things are happening. When they get the creepy calls from the killer, she goes to the police and tries to make a report. She tries to stop it. And how many people in horror movies don't do anything of the sort when something creepy happens, especially something as innocuous as a phone call? So yeah, there's a lot of reasons for why Jess just needs more recognition as a woman in horror. I think we definitely should not be leaving her out of the final girl conversations for sure. Next is the Countess Elizabeth Bathory from Daughters of Darkness. Daughters of Darkness is a 70s movie that is about a very glamorous vampire who lives in this old hotel and takes on lovers and kills people for blood, as vampires do. I'm probably going to say her name wrong, but she's portrayed by Delphine Seyrig, whose character design is modeled after Marlene Dietrich. She's just very lavish and glamorous, and she has this sort of sensual elegance to her. We know that she's bad, we know that she is the villain of the film, but we are still enamored by her, we're still captivated by her. And I think that's definitely a testament to the actress, but also to the way the role is written. Her wardrobe is absolutely stunning. Every outfit she wears is literally something that you could walk onto the red carpet in. And Seyrig portrays her with such a charm and elegance, and she really makes you understand why the characters in this movie would be seduced by her. So just going on her look alone and the romanticism of the film, the cinematography is so beautiful. I think this is one that gets talked about a little bit within more niche horror circles, especially the LGBT community, because Countess Bathory, in the film, they say that she kidnaps young girls, and that goes along with the mythicism of the real-life Countess Bathory. And so she is a lesbian vampire, which was a huge thing in the 70s. Lesbian vampire was a huge trope in horror movies. But I think that Countess Bathory really stands out because of her character design, the writing of the character, and just the way that Delphine brings her to life. So I definitely think more people should be talking about Countess Bathory. Next up is May Dove Kennedy from May. May is portrayed by the amazing Angela Bettis. This is another film that is really well known in certain circles of the horror community. But again, in the larger conversation, it just kind of gets forgotten. And May is just such an interesting and sympathetic character. She is very akin to Carrie for me, which is funny because Angela Bettis did portray Carrie White in the made-for-TV version of that story. She is just this awkward, lonely girl who you really feel for. You just want her to make friends and be happy, and she just has such a hard time with that. And I'm sure everybody can relate to May at some point in their lives. You just have this real sympathy for this character, and you maybe can't see why she goes as far and does what she does, but you get the sense that this character feels like she has no other option. Also, the fact that she is basically a female bisexual Frankenstein is just so cool, and is such a different way to write a female character. I mean, the fact that she hooks up with both Jeremy Sisto and Anna Faris is just iconic, and it makes me a little bit jealous, not gonna lie. I just think the characterizations of May are really unique, and I wish that we had some more characters like her where it's not a perfect character, it is a very flawed and troubled person that we still want to root for. Lucky McKee just really did a fantastic job with the film overall, and I think May just deserves a lot more credit. Next is the girl from A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. This film is an Iranian vampire noir western, so that alone makes it really different and really special. But Sheila Van's performance as the girl is incredible. She is this vampire who just goes around this ghost town called Bad City, killing bad people. Her look is so distinct with her, I'm not sure if it's a hijab or what it's called, please forgive me, but the head covering that she wears, her striped shirt, her red lips, and of course her skateboard as an accessory. Like, how cool is that? And she does what every woman wishes she could do, is walk home alone at night and not worry about being assaulted, attacked, or even killed. That's just like ultimate goals, which of course it's terrible that we have to worry about that still, but flipping the script and making the woman into the dangerous force as opposed to the men is a really cool inversion of a normal horror movie story. There's the part where the guy is putting his finger in the girl's mouth and she just bites his finger off. Like, that's so iconic. I think that the girl gets a lot of love in more of the indie factions of the horror community, but she really deserves so much love. And Van's portrayal is just hauntingly beautiful. And I just think we need more representation of different cultures in horror. The fact that this movie is an Iranian movie is amazing, and I wish that we saw more movies like it. Next up is Alice from Cam. In Cam, Alice is portrayed by Madeline Brewer, who a lot of you probably know from A Handmaid's Tale. She's also in a few other horror movies, that movie Braid. I can't remember more off the top of my head, but she's a phenomenal actress, and Cam is such an interesting story. It's actually written by a former Cam girl, so you get actual first-hand experience of someone who lived this type of lifestyle in the movie, which frankly needs to happen more, especially for people like sex workers, who are often misrepresented in media because the people writing those stories do not have that life experience, and they're often misunderstood because of these representations. So that fact alone is really awesome. And Alice within the story is always trying to do what's best for her, regardless of the people around her, regardless of what others think. She is trying to be good at her craft, and she wants to succeed. And then a pesky little doppelganger gets in the way and takes over her Cam account. So even after she is outed as a Cam girl, she still wants to do it. She still persists because it's what she wants to do, and she's just not going to change her life or her lifestyle to please other people. And that's such a commendable trait to have. Plus, Madeline Brewer just has this endearing quality to her. She really makes you like the character of Alice, and she makes you want to root for her. You want her to succeed. And even when she goes to the police to report what's happening, they don't take her seriously because of her job, and I think that that is so true to life. And the fact that that's represented in a horror movie and the character is given real consideration by the writers and by the people that made the movie just goes to show why Alice is a character that should be remembered and should be celebrated. Next is Pauline from Excision. Annalyn McCord plays Pauline, a very awkward teenager who is really into anatomy and surgery and medical stuff, and who's also going through a sort of coming of age, coming into her sexuality. And she's exploring that throughout the film. I recently watched this movie for the first time, and I was completely blown away by McCord's portrayal of Pauline. She is such a magnetic character. Despite being very strange and different from her classmates, she has such a confidence to her, and she really doesn't care what anybody thinks about her. She's going to have her interests and be the way she is, which is so cool to see a teenage girl portrayed like that, because a lot of times we're made to feel insecure about these parts of ourselves and we shrink into ourselves. Coming from someone who was a teenage girl at one point, I can totally relate to that. And her being so confident and so sure of herself is frankly not really seen, especially in movies where we're not focusing on the quote-unquote popular girl. We're focusing on the weirdo. We're focusing on the nerd, the person who is different. So that in and of itself makes her very unique. And then we get these set pieces of her in her fantasies where she is totally made up to look like a supermodel, basically, in these very bizarre surgical type situations that are also tied in with her sexuality. And I've never seen anything like that in a movie. It's so different and so unique. And I just don't see people talking about her that much, and it's really sad, because I think she deserves to be discussed way more often. She's also one that's a little ambiguous like May. Is she the heroine? I guess you can't really call her that because she does some pretty horrific things for sure. But she's not quite an anti-hero, she's not a villain, so she stands in that really unique space as well. She has one of the biggest power moves I've ever seen in a movie, which is she purposefully takes Ipecac syrup to get back at a teacher who is mean to her, as well as a girl who's bullying her. She takes it in class and wants to be excused to the bathroom. The teacher says no, so she just turns her head and throws up on this girl who's sitting next to her. Like, if that's not iconic, I don't know what is. So yeah, Pauline from Excision absolutely needs to be considered more in the overall discussion of women in horror, as well as Annalyn McCord's performance as her. Like, I just think she's such an underrated character. Next is Stretch from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Stretch is our main character in this movie. We see her working as a radio DJ, and she gets this call from someone who is being attacked by Leatherface. And she saves this call and puts it out on the air so that people can listen to it and see if they can figure out who this killer is and what happened. So just in that, she is taking a lot of agency and trying to help solve a murder, which is really cool. You can just tell that she really takes her job very seriously. And Caroline Williams plays her absolutely perfectly. She's very strong and smart. Even when she is in situations with Leatherface and the rest of the Sawyer gang, she's dropped into this like hellish nightmare essentially. And even though, I mean, she does freak out, she definitely does, but she keeps her wits about her enough to be able to survive. Caroline Williams actually said, I forget if it was in an interview on a podcast or a TV show, I can't remember. It may have been the In Search of Darkness documentary, actually, where she's talking about her audition for the role. And she said that all these girls were going into the audition room very quietly and then coming out very quietly. And she was like, well, this is a horror movie, right? So she barrels into the audition room screaming her head off. And that sold the part. She killed it. And she brings that energy to the movie. Stretch is such a likable character. And she has a very iconic fit. She's got the straight across bangs and the high-waisted shorts and that blue button down and her cowboy boots. And the look is completed with a chainsaw at the end of the movie. Stretch is just a really cool character, and we talk about Sally Hardesty some, and I feel like we talk about Stretch even less. Even though she's a way more compelling character than Sally, no hate to Marilyn Burns, I think she's awesome. I just think Stretch is a more fleshed out character than Sally. But yeah, I think that Stretch is one of the stronger characters in the overall Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. It would be really cool to see her come back. I know we're getting the sequel or reboot or whatever in February. I'm sure Caroline Williams has nothing to do with it, which is very unfortunate because Stretch is such a cool character. I would absolutely love to see her come back into the franchise at some point. I guess we'll see how this movie does, if it's well received. But yeah, Stretch is one of my personal favorite women in horror. And Caroline Williams is so knowledgeable and so passionate about what she does. And I think that really shines through in her portrayal of Stretch and just in her acting in general. And last but not least is Maddie Young from Hush. Maddie is a deaf author played by Kate Siegel who lives in sort of an isolated wooded area, and she's attacked by this man in her home who is going around just killing people with a bow and arrow. And so she has to deal with this whole situation while being unable to hear and unable to speak. Just getting representation of a deaf person in a horror movie is really necessary. I think that people with disabilities are very underrepresented in horror movies, and if they are, a lot of times it can be a problematic representation. So obviously Kate Siegel is not deaf herself, so it would have been ideal to have a deaf person play Maddie. But I think that Kate does a great job showing all of her emotions and conveying her thoughts and feelings without saying anything, just in her facial expressions and her body language and her movements. She makes Maddie a really likable and compelling character that we want to root for. We want her to survive. And I think a lot of times in home invasion movies, the people who are being invaded can have kind of bland personalities. I'm kind of looking at you, strangers. Sorry. Sorry to Liv Tyler and whoever the guy was in that. I don't know. I think that's a very important thing that you have to have in a home invasion movie, is that you really want to be rooting for the person whose home is being invaded. And we absolutely feel that way about Maddie. And the way that she uses her skills as a writer to help her survive, how she looks at all possible scenarios of what could happen and what ending would be the best outcome for her, is a really interesting plot device. And she is very resourceful. She takes the things around her and uses them to her advantage. Like her super loud and strobing smoke detector. She uses that against the man who's invading her home. I'm not a member of the deaf community, and I think sometimes people can be portrayed as having like supernatural abilities because of their disability, which I'm not sure how deaf people feel about that. To me, it does seem like it can be a little bit harmful or detrimental just depending on how it is portrayed. And to me personally, it seemed like in Hush, Maddie was just being very smart and using her deductive reasoning and things like that in order to overcome. It wasn't like she could magically sense things or anything like that, if that makes sense. So please, if you are a member of the deaf community and you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. But it seems like it was a very respectful representation. And I do know that Kate Siegel co-wrote the film with Mike Flanagan. So she is very intimately involved with the character. She is very integral in the creation of Maddie. And I think that makes her even more effective in portraying her because she knows her so well. Like, she literally helped write her. And Maddie is such a badass. She really fights her hardest against this guy. She literally writes in her own blood on the window to communicate with him, which is just the most badass thing ever. She's strong, she's persistent, she's clever, just all the things you want in your protagonist in a horror film. So that is my list of underrated female characters in horror. I just wanted to have a nice round, even number of 10. Of course, there are a lot of characters that I could have put on this list, so please let me know in the comments if there is a woman in horror that you think is underrated or underrepresented in the horror community, and just in the larger discussion of films in general. I think this is a really interesting topic, and I'm really curious to see what y'all have to say. And let me know if you want me to do a video on underrated men in the horror genre. I think that would be really fun as well. And if you feel so inclined, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That really does help me out a lot, and it lets me know what you guys like and helps me get out there for more people to see my content. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk horror next time.